Welcome to the Coaching Edge podcast with your co-hosts, Dr. Steve Jeffs and Erwin de Grave. Each episode, we bring you expert guests and transformative coaching insights. Let's dive in.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of the Coaching Ed podcast with your co-host, Dr. Steve Jeffs. I myself, Erwin de Grave, and today we have the pleasure to talk to Lisa Carver. Hello, Lisa. Welcome.
Hi, nice to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you. And Steve, welcome, of course, as well. So, Lisa, we could try to introduce yourself, but you know yourself much better than we do. So, who's Lisa? What did she do in coaching? How did she get in coaching? And that's it. I'm not going to shoot more questions. So, who's Lisa?
Okay. So pleased to be here today. So yeah, I'm Lisa Carver. I'm a team and leadership coach, and I'm going to say an organizational development coach, but we'll come to that later on. I have been coaching officially since 2017. That's when I completed my qualification. But you reflect back and inadvertently you realize you may have been coaching for years without realizing just kind of the way you approach certain situations. But officially got the badge in 2017. I see this as my second career. My first career, so for the first 16 years of my career, I was working in a totally different trade. So also I thought, and we'll look at the link on that. So I worked in sales. I worked in sales. I led sales teams, went up various corporate ladders, head of sales, divisional leaders. And my last employed role was MD of a multinational media company, but I was in charge of the UK London office, and it's a sales organization, so our business was selling the products of other businesses, and we took a cut, and during that time the business that I was running, we were acquiring other businesses. And so yes, Erwin, when we did a brief intro off camera, and you were talking about you're working in mergers and acquisitions, like that's kind of an area for you. We were in that space, and during that time I had a coach. This is often the path, right? So people come into coaching because they've had a coach themselves. And we can get into that a bit more later, but I had a coach and I thought, oh, I like this. And I started reading about taking a coaching approach to leadership, and I just thought I could just drink this stuff. I really liked it. And obviously I had a lot of live action going on. And so I was able to apply different approaches straight away and kind of like observe the impact. And so, yeah, it was like a really sort of lots of penny drop moments, really interesting time. I had done no qualifications in psychology, hadn't studied it at school at all. But I really, I was like, I love this stuff. And you kind of realize that in sales, it's what you're doing all the time, but you're just not naming it. And a lot of it becomes, especially when you are, with a team of very well-established salespeople who, it's not their first rodeo. They've been selling for years. They have an innate felt sense, usually, of how to play things, and without realizing it, they are knowing the right buttons to tap with people. It's quite interesting. But it's all about relationships, like genuine relationships. It's all about trust. It's all about great communication. It's all about really understanding other people's needs. It's all about asking the right questions and listening and proving that you're listening. And so anyway, I had a coach during that time, and then I went off for a maternity leave for my second baby, and I didn't return from that, and I went and got my master's level qualification in coaching, back to university, and then started another career. So that's my why, that's my well, kind of my why, in that I was like, I love this stuff. I was really tired of selling. And I felt really disadvantaged when I was on that course with that cohort, because I would say 60 to 70% of people in there were HR professionals, people that come from corporate kind of people divisional roles, right? So they knew the lingo, they knew all the HR lingo, they had contacts. Their LinkedIn was like full of other HR people who would basically become their customers, right? And I was like, I'm from a sales background, I don't know anyone in this game, this is totally a new market for me. This is a long intro. I've gone straight into story time, but yeah, sorry. I've realised that that actually sales has really helped. I didn't want to get back into a full-time job selling, but actually, when you're creating a coaching business, actually, I feel I wasn't at a disadvantage having a sales, marketing, advertising background, because actually it's helped me launch my business more easily, because I've kind of known which way to go with things. Yeah.
I'm going to jump on this real quick. So you just articulated that your realization was you weren't actually disadvantaged. I'm kind of sitting here from the outside going, and how could you actually think that you were disadvantaged in that context? So recognizing the perspectives, of course, and reality is always different. Coming from a sales perspective, how did it make sense that you felt you were disadvantaged in that space? Yeah, start there.
Because I okay, so like I didn't know the customer well. Okay, so when you launch a business in the coaching market, it's understanding the world that your customer inhabits. Like, what's it like to be working in a HR team and have a particular situation where you and the line manager have tried to support things with X, Y, and Z, and it hasn't worked. And then what do you do? Maybe coaching is the answer. I hadn't. Whereas a lot of people in coaching have not, have been in those people functions in corporates. So they have basically sat in the shoes of the customer. And knowing that is, if you have been in that position, you know what those people are really craving, what they need from a supplier, what would reassure them from a supplier point of view. And also, as I said, there's something about the language. And I spend a lot of time talking to HR people professionals now, and I realize that I'm talking in that language, and then you kind of like, phrases like, engagement and yeah, all those things like that's actually not a normal word, that isn't used. But lots of lingo, right? I can't now, I'm like, can't think of any other examples, but like and I've become aware of that, because sometimes you go to write like a LinkedIn post, right, and you go, why am I using this language, which is just like but yeah. So anyway, when I came into coaching, I felt a little bit like a fish out of water. I mean, I would do anyway with a career change, but I didn't meet anyone else on my coaching qualification, or sort of in those early meetings that I had with other coaches who'd come from a sales background.
Well, thank you for that. I really appreciate that. Because once we get into the details, the narrative that I'm hearing seems very familiar for a lot of coaches. How can I do this? I don't know. I don't have the connections. I don't have all of these things. This is uncertainty as we step into the new, which makes sense. And so so I appreciate hearing that perspective.
When I was listening to you, I was turning it around. Have you ever thought that the 60-70% of HR person felt disadvantaged against you because you came from sales and you knew how to open the door, that they maybe don't know?
Absolutely. And I now, several years in, as I've spent more time with fellow coaches, and he's like, that's the feedback I get. I was in a supervision session the other day, and I was talking about something. I was talking about overworking and kind of like spending too much time, right? Because actually in sales the job's never done at all. And I was saying, I've never sit at my desk and go, I don't know how to get the customer, or I don't know what to do. Like the fact is that I almost know too many approaches or ways to do it. I could go this way, I could go that way, and I've got to complete that, and I haven't done this, and I need to do this next. I kind of know the path in my head, and it's always laid out in front of me, and it will never be complete, right? I'll never have completed all those tasks. But I do know, I do feel, and I do understand how the sales process works, how to create relationships to the point of closing, and then maintain those relationships.
You said also something in your introduction that when you came to coaching and you saw that really what coaching is also asking the right question, which is in sales as well. So why is it so difficult for coaches to sell?
Do you want my truthful feeling about it?
If
And
you
it can
want
be
to,
an
yeah.
opinion. It doesn't
I know,
need
but I
evidence
don't want
or-
people to get like that. Okay, so I'll talk about how I feel or think, or let's put it as a hypothesis.
Okay.
And also, this won't be all coaches, so there'll be some people listening and say that's not me. Okay, so just put that disclaimer.
Yeah.
Don't want to cause any offense. Basically, yes, it is about asking the right questions, but in order to meet your customer, in order to gain a profile with your customer, you also have to be prepared to be vulnerable, take a risk, be uncomfortable. And you also have to be prepared to, unpopular word, grind quite a lot. I mean, if I personally, for most of my customers, it's probably taken me 2 years for me to get them at the point when they will say, we'll give you a chance with a small contract. And I just, there's something in sales where, I mean, there's loads of different models and things you can look at, but you get 10 no's and then your 11th time it's a yes, and it's just about approaching them lots of different ways, but in a way that isn't just like banging on the same door in the same way and just not giving up. That's not the message. Because there's lots of ways to crack the nut, and I think it's just about, there's a little bit of grit. And I think often you will hear, well, I connected with them on LinkedIn, I sent them a message, I wrote them an email, and I didn't hear back from them, so there we are. And I think that that's your first 5 minutes in a 2-year campaign. There's a lot that goes on, and also, I always cite this example, and I think this is laying out, but the American coach Mel Robbins, right? We all know Mel Robbins. She's written some books. Do we know Mel Robbins? Do you know who I'm talking about? Okay. A few years ago, I was listening to something, and she was saying, every time she launches a new, not necessarily a book, but like a short course on YouTube, even if it's a free access one, her and her team develop 100 pieces of content. Okay, which they then, and that's just the social media campaign, right? To break through and get attention in the market with your ideal customer, and to like establish your brand and establish trust, it's quite a determined effort. And I kind of think in my early years now, I did my qualification in coaching, went to launch my business, and then surprised I found out I was pregnant with my third child, and so I had a bit of a delay there. But I think about that. I think like every time my child napped, I was writing social media content. I was trying to get opportunities for meetings. Oh my gosh, I got a meeting. I got a 3-week-old baby. I'd get my mum to look after the baby for an hour. I quickly went and did the meeting. I had probably 2.5 years of really not getting paid, but trying to bang on doors and create opportunities. So then I'm thinking, gosh, maybe some people find it easy, but I don't know. I have found it's been hard work. So I think people say, well, how do you get these opportunities? It doesn't just land. You have to create them.
What would you do different? So it took you like 2.5 years to get the first
decently client. like to start thinking, okay, now I've got a salary which is a small percentage of what I had before. Yeah.
What would you do different? Is there anything that you would do different to go quicker, or you say no, that was the right way?
God, that's a good question. Maybe I would have spent a little more time creating my own wheelhouse. Okay, a little bit more creating my own content. Like I did start doing a mailing list and sending stuff out, but I could have got that together a little bit quicker. I've probably only in the last 1.5 years started doing that really consistently, much more professionally, much better. And also think like what you guys are doing here, right? So you're creating your own content. You can drive people to your own platform. I invested a lot in social media. I think social media will always be here. Social media is a valid platform, but it's not everything. And I think really you are putting a lot of time and energy, which equals money, to build a house on someone else's land. And I think, I if you go on my my Instagram, I had a beautiful grid where I was doing a color pattern and everything was perfectly looking good, because I thought it's not my main platform. LinkedIn's my main platform, but if they look me up on Instagram, I'm going to look good, and I think like younger generation are coming up, so I'm investing my time and money into that. Overnight they changed the size of each post. Okay, so the size, right, and it looks a bit messy now. I spent a lot of, and also there's not only me designing, I paid a designer to do a lot of that stuff, right? When we had no money to be paying for this kind of thing, because I wanted it to look slick, right? So you kind of go, that's a large investment. I'm not saying don't do those platforms, but it was, I think there's something around developing your own wheelhouse. People that have they've got a developed YouTube platform. That's something I'd like to do in the future, but I also think you can't do everything all at once.
No, you can't.
I try to approach it like a marketeer who would have a 1 to 2 year marketing plan, and we execute that. And then we review what's worked, what hasn't. Okay, let's try something else now. And then we do it properly, rather than trying to do 8 things and not completing it. Because at the end of the day, you are both the product and the business owner. You are like literally all the hats, all the jobs at once.
Yeah. So offline, I believe listening to you, and certainly for those coaches that start, being offline, networking and going in person, I think is much more valuable and powerful than trying to get that attention in this online space. Do you see that the same?
Yes, I do. I think it is, right. But where do you meet your customer? So it's great to meet them in person, right? So where do you meet your customer? Firstly, I think in-person networking for coaches is fantastic, or not just coach to coach, but I'm talking about if you're going to your local chamber of commerce, that kind of thing, right? Because you've got to introduce yourself. Who are you? What do you do? Who are your customers? Like that kind of thing. Like what's the problem you're solving? So being able to kind of verbalize that is really important. So the face-to-face stuff is fantastic. But if I was to look like my customers and think, well, how do I meet them?
Great question.
So yeah, there was events. Last week I think there was the World of Learning happening in London. I didn't go to it. Could have gone to it, but I didn't go to it. But there would have been a lot of like big corporates there with their L&D team. Could have gone to that. I in fact had it marked in my diary. If I'd had time, I would have gone. How would I have made myself known there? It's quite difficult because it's basically full of people trying to connect with these other people as well. I've done a few other things over my time. I mean, you could call them. I mean, are they tricks? I don't know. Is it a trick?
I don't know.
So I think well, it's not right. So there's, for example, there is a customer who, okay, in my early years of running my mailing list, I was finding who my customers would be, and I would find their email addresses. If it's online, it's in the public domain. You can add them in, but make sure they can easily unsubscribe. You know, you've got to be really, really careful with GDPR and do things properly. And there was a customer who, or potential customer, potential client, right, who had downloaded the brochure. I'd said, click here to download my brochure. They downloaded it. And then I think they'd written an email saying, this sounds interesting. Can you send me more stuff? I'd sent them more stuff. And then they didn't reply. So I sent them another email. I was fine. And then I found an article about them online and said, oh, just seen this. I was thinking of you, saw this online, thought this could be relevant. Does this help? Found all these different ways. And they just weren't responding. So at one point in time, my email had landed in their inbox and they thought, this is good. This is exactly answering what I need right now. But then that moment had passed and I was just sort of banging. Thought, how can I? So I worked out where they physically were in the country. And I found an event that was going on in that area that could plausibly be of my interest. And I sent them an email. I said, I'm going to an event in your area. I'd love to come pop in. And happy to kind of confidentially talk about your situation with you. And they said, yeah, come in. And I didn't go to that event. But you know, that was a chance that I took. I had to pay out money for the train. I stayed in a hotel that night. All because someone had said they downloaded the brochure and said they were interested at one point. But so when you talk about the power of face to face, that actual meeting has led to 4.5 years of work. I'm still working with them. They're still a client. But I got in front of them face to face. So the face to face thing is important, but I think you've got to think about how you're going to really connect with them and get their attention. I was like one-to-one with them for half an hour. I said, oh yeah, I'm attending this conference, and so I'm here. I remembered you'd shown some interest, so I just wondered if it would work for you. So there's that. What else
Really
have I
like that
done?
story, just to capture some of the insights there. Great, you had some sort of lead magnet, some sort of thing that people could click on that got them onto the list. Having that is a great step. You followed up. You were thinking of this person. You were sending him. You were reviewing the list to think about who are the people that I should be thinking of. So I think there's still attention that's being paid to these people that have shown interest. And I think that's part of the relationship that we're building. Whether they're responding or not, you're taking action and actively doing so to be able to potentially, or at least invite the progression of the relationship. You took action to do the research to find an event that was plausible. Whether you went to it or not is a different story. You let them know, you actually traveled, you stayed. Like, there's a whole lot of commitment and effort that you're putting in. And I'm highlighting this because these are the things that are easy to overlook in listening to the story and getting really excited about the outcome. But the outcome wouldn't have come if you hadn't done these. And I wanted to connect this to what you said earlier, which struck me. The first answer that you said about where coaches don't, or they get stuck in sales, was actually vulnerability. And I love that because most coaches would say, no, vulnerability is a trademark of who I am and how I coach. But actually, there's a different flavor of vulnerability that you're articulating, that willingness to get out there, to be seen, to create opportunities rather than just sit there and wait them and wait for them. And so I love this story because that really captured and it exemplified a lot of what you've been speaking to.
Yeah, and I think, like, have you ever read that book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway?
Yes.
Susan, I can't, somebody called Susan who wrote it. If you haven't read it, it's a book that you can read in an hour and a half, right? But it's all about how you build confidence and stuff. But there's something, especially as, okay, so I'm going to caricature a British person, right? There's something about things that make us cringe, okay? And I think you kind of have to be prepared to step through that. So, like, if I was to go up to somebody I don't really know and I say, oh, do you want to go for a coffee? They're like, it's like cringy. What if they say no? And that kind of feels a little bit like over familiar. We don't know each other well enough to do that kind of thing.
I love it. I'm picturing people's faces when I say good morning to them. Not even ask for coffee. Like, I say good morning to a stranger and I get that funny look.
Yeah. So, but you have to be prepared to step into that space, but while also like acknowledging this feels uncomfortable and not just like ignoring your spidey senses that the other one's awkward, right? So I'm like, you're fully on, you're in that space, and try and make it as little uncomfortable as possible, but you have to be prepared to sit in that space. And it's kind of cringe. And I think, where did I become more comfortable with that? Firstly, in my sales career, but also like prior to my sales career, I traveled for 2 years around the world on my own. And I think I became what I learned is I wasn't in sales at the time. It was like after university. And what I realized is like I'm naturally can be quite a sociable person, but in order, like if I'm traveling on my own, I'm on a bus and there's couples on the bus and there's groups of friends and I'm here as a lone traveler, right? If I want to kind of create a connection and a vibe and kind of start hooking on and traveling with people, I have to step into which stop are you getting off at today? It's like a question. It's like, oh, I'm getting off here. Oh, okay, yeah, no, I went there last time and I wasn't so happy with that. And have you been to any good bars around here? Or like, do you know what I mean? You've got to be able to push yourself rather than sort of being like, I'm just on my own seat in the bus. Why haven't I got anyone connecting with me? Or if put the coaching business hat on, I'm on a seat on a bus. Why haven't I got any customers? Because actually you've got to go out and you have to proactively start the conversation. Sometimes you may get a bit of egg on your face, but actually you're kind of got to go, okay, let's move on to the next person. So I think it's cringy, it's uncomfortable, and it's not about ignoring that discomfort, but it is about pushing through it slightly.
And I think what you said, just to add on, don't try to make a connection with someone. Start selling immediately. That's what happened with people. They do just, hey, I got to. No, you need to find that first. hey, where do you step off, or where do you have a coffee, or where you go? That's what I feel, because some people just go in there and they feel they're already making that in that area to step in, and then selling on top. It's even like even more burden.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think now I'm a few years in, and I've had lots of customers, some small, some big, but maybe if I think I've probably got 4 or 5 quite big customers that I've kind of repeat booking customers. I think when my business gets a new customer, it's often off the back of that work now, because I'm not directly picking up the phone to get new customers. I'm doing less of that, but the magic comes when your work is advocated for you by other people, right? So they go, oh, we used her for that project, she was really good. And you go, wow, that's my sales work done, right? That's it, that's done. I don't need to do any more. I've got an endorsement. But what you can do if you don't have that, and I'm now starting to develop more of these, it's like in my list of sales jobs that are never ending, right, is I need to do more case studies. We need more case studies in the world of AI, where anyone can write the perfect proposal, right? Anyone can look at the brief, write the perfect proposal that's got all the right language in, blah, 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 blah. I can do this, I can do that, we can do this, right? So somebody could put a job out with 4 different coaching organizations, and everyone would maybe come back with something which was like 98% perfect. What it's going to come down to actually is, what have you done before? Where's your evidence of success? I think case studies are becoming really important. I think I've got 4 or 5 on my website. One of my sales targets, well, sales like marketing targets this year, is to kind of end the year with 10 to 12 case studies on the website, because I think that is that evidence, that's that body of work. And so even a new customer go, not worked with her before, but actually we can see she's worked with that organization, and that's where they were at the beginning, and now this is where they are at the end, and there's like a metric that's measured it. Like I actually think, and I think if I was to have, and this is maybe a question, but I can't perfectly answer it without giving it a bit more thought, but if I was to have a limited amount of time to put into sales and marketing across the next month, I would put some time definitely into developing case studies. So not putting all your time into writing social media posts. It's still good to have a presence there, right? But there's that element as well that I think we need to be creating content on our own land. Okay, not on that whole thing I talked about, laying foundations on someone else's land. Equally putting some stuff on our own. Yeah.
Excellent. I think it's a really good tip. I think a lot of us as coaches can hide behind confidentiality and play small because of it. But actually, success, evidence of success is a phrase that's really cool. Well, what are people getting? What are they seeing? What impact have you had? Let me hear it through their words. And you mentioned customer companies. When we ask permission, I see a lot of clients that are actually really excited to share testimonials and to be part of spreading the word of the impact that they've been able to receive, because they're excited by what they've got. They're not hiding it. And I think when
Yeah.
we grant them that permission, we can spread their voice. It's not a breach of confidentiality.
But yeah, thank you. It's a really good, because that is a common, well, I can't because of confidentiality, and that needs to be honored. But I think there are ways around that. So firstly, like if I was working, I do quite a lot of work in sort of conflict space, and often I will start with a team, and the word used to describe that team is toxic. That's the favorite word. Oh, it's a toxic team, which I don't really like that label. I don't think it's useful. But if I'm going to be writing a case study, I'm not going to be writing, I was working with this toxic team. I'm not going to use that language. But what I will do is, it depends how I'm measuring the success. So whether it may be like with a survey, or there may be, whatever those metrics are that success is being measured against, I will put those particular metrics in. So this was the starting point, this was the ending point. And also, like, I may not, depending on the size of the organization, I may not even put the brand of the company up there. It depends. You've got to have something, you've got to put up something that either anonymizes them. So it might be a health, let's say it was a healthcare client. I could talk about it was an NHS organization. You know, they've probably got something like 570 different organizations. So I was working with an NHS organization. I wouldn't ever call it a toxic team. Firstly, as I said, I don't like that language, but I would say, I might say there were certain processes that were less than effective. The relationships were strained. There were so you use that language, which is like, I'm just like, all teams get to that place at one point. But it is about the starting metric, what you did, the ending metric, and it's like a proof point of what you can do. Yeah,
I think it's interesting what you mentioned now about the metrics. And listening to you, I believe it would be really important for every coach, certainly in the discovery phase when they start to establish the metrics. Because if you have that and really design maybe together with the client the metrics that they can measure, but that allows you when you get to the end and you have a really good basis for a case study. Because you have the beginning metrics, you don't have to figure it out anymore. What was that? No, what are the metrics? How are we going to measure that specifically? That's more like the CEO coming in that sense.
yeah,
Let's put the metrics in there so that we can at the end figure out and show, hey, that's the change that was created.
yeah. And on a one-to-one basis, I mean, I don't think I've ever put a case study up about a one-to-one coaching relationship. But let's use that as an example where, let's say you're working with someone. There's something about being explicit about the objectives, and I know often we all know that we need to do that, but that can sometimes get lost, and then you're drifting into the cozy chat territory, or just sort of going from issue to issue when you arrive in the coaching session, right? But like, I will always push for 1 to 3 objectives in a coaching relationship, and any associate that works through my organization, that's kind of how I'm like, you need to have what the objectives are. Is a sentence that outlines what it is. That might change as you go through the coaching, because when you first like peel the onion back, you think this is what it's about, and then you go, actually it's something else, right? So but you go, what do we want to achieve here? What would success look like in 6 months time? Like, what do you want to see? Where do you want to see the shift? And you might even have like, I want to improve. It could be as loose as improve my well-being, become a better leader, drive my team to success. Very loose, not specific there. So I would probably be working to tighten them up, but let's just keep it at that top level. I mean, it really helps to it's actually a good coaching question to be asking. Where do you think you are now? What do you think you need to do? What are the key components to move yourself to a better place? What would success look like? What would a 6 out of 10 look like here? And I will often ask them to, I tend to do it after every 3 sessions. I would say, well, let's go back to your objectives, right? So where do you think you're moving the dial? What have you done to move the dial? What more do you need to do to move the dial? So even if you just had 3 statements that represented the objectives for the one-to-one coaching relationship, you could say this was the starting point, and the client rated it, 10%, 15%, and 7% is starting point. So I am okay with my mental health. Like, I do like a walk once a week, and I do make sure I drink enough water, but I know it's not good enough, for example. So I'd rate myself like 15%. You're then asking them to like re-rate themselves, right? So I'm kind of like, I have moved the dial kind of at about 35% at a point of satisfaction, or a point for me. So you generate those numbers, right? Putting those numbers behind things, it's not only great for the organization, but it's actually great for, I think, for in that coaching relationship, to create conversations. But I also want to say sometimes those objectives change because life changes. And there has to be permission to do that. But yeah, that's one example of where you wouldn't think you would be able to find quantifiable metrics, but you can find them.
I guess a really good distinction between what is quantifiable and the subjective. I think in many cases we go, no, it's got to be an objective external measure. We've got to have these numbers, but actually a lot of the time just asking the question, being able to assess and evaluate is enough. It's not everything. And there is an increasing demand that I'm seeing for sort of external objectives, measures, results, and certainly business results, not just the sort of things we talk about in coaching in a little bit, but actually business impact. So yeah, we got to come to that. And let's not ignore the subjective journey and giving people permission to identify progress, identify where they are, and set some vision and planning going forwards. I think it's a really good point. So noticing time, it's gone super quick and this has been really engaging. But one of the things that a lot of people are talking about is how much is shifting, how much is changing, and all this sort of stuff that's going on, not just in the world, but also in coaching. So when you look sort of forwards at the profession of coaching, what's catching your attention? Either because you're seeing it or you're intrigued or curious about it.
I mean, the obvious thing I'm going to talk about is AI, right? That's like let's bring that into the center of the room. But actually, I forecasting that I think the human in-room, in-person stuff will become more and more valued. I think you know, the AI, all the AI platforms, actually, they're wonderful. There's some fantastic stuff that you can get there, but I think there's something about human to human, you know, the hairs on your arms going up, like shifts are led through hearts, minds, emotions, and a real felt sense that cannot truly be like created digitally, right? And so maybe there'll be a more of an emergence of there being two tiers of being sort of in that virtual space or being in the room. But I think like us humans, we seek experience. You know, I think, I don't know the data, but I'm imagining there's been a resurgence in the travel industry. I imagine probably greater than pre-COVID ever was, and that's not just about a thirst to get back into that experience. It's because so much of our lives can be surrounding this box. And so we are seeking something that we can physically experience and go on a bit of a journey with. And I think for organizations that are really looking to experience, for their people to really like go through change with hearts and minds, I think in the room stuff, I think it's really important, and I think that will come. I mean, it's already, we're already seeing the sprouts of that, but I think that will continue. You know, humans need to be listened to, and my ChatGPT waiting for me to write in a prompt is not as satisfying as having this conversation with you, right? Like that's not me being listened to. Like we need it's like you know, the stroke economy, right? If you're doing the TA stuff, like we need that attention.
It's a really powerful distinction, the difference between being listened to and waited for.
Yeah.
There's something really profound in that. Fascinating.
Well, Lisa, we can continue for probably a few other hours, but it was a really exciting talk with you. Where can people find out more about you if they're really interested? And
Yeah, check me out on LinkedIn, Lisa Carver, or on my website. I hadn't intended to talk about bloody sales the whole time, talk about sales, right? And this is the thing, I wanted to get out of that sales industry, but as I say, I seem to find myself in it again. But yeah, so I thought we were going to talk about a little bit other coaches. We'll save that for another episode, maybe.
Well,
But
exactly.
Yeah. What had you hoped we'd talk about?
don't know. I came open-minded actually, but it's well, I don't. What had I thought? I do a lot of work with teams. I do a lot of work managing conflict, and I wondered if we might go there, but it's absolutely fine. We didn't go there, and I suppose. If you are a fellow coach listening, you probably want to hear about how to like drive your business a bit. So hopefully that's been useful.
Let's take a minute
So
there.
back to the sales.
What is it? What is it that inspires you about teams and conflict? Like conflict feels like a thing that most of us avoid, let alone head towards with a coaching hat on.
Okay, I'm not going to say it inspires me. I seem to be getting quite a lot of work in that space. So I've worked with a few teams, and I suppose you work well. I've worked with quite a few teams now. It's sort of been a bit of a snowball over the last few years, where there has needed to be a culture shift, because it's not been like a healthy place to be. So does it inspire me? No, I've done a lot of work in that space, and therefore I'm developing quite a toolkit around it. And I also I think it's really valuable for a coach to be in that space who, firstly, initially goes in with no emotional connection to the individuals, so they're able to think clean. And, as part of our coaching practice, this is about coming in with no bias and being clean. So generally, poor behaviors play out because people aren't listened to and they've got something to say. And because it's not been listened to, they act out. So, like, coaches are perfect in that space. And I also think there's something about connecting with empathy. It's just human to human, right? But I didn't mean to find myself in that niche, but I seem to be in that niche. But yeah, I don't know what I thought I was going to talk about today, if I'm honest. But anyway, great to have had this time with you.
well, thank you very much, Lisa, and everybody else. Thank you for listening in. And until the next episode, take care. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to The Coaching Edge. Until next time, keep coaching and keep growing.